Hey there, it's Sean Baumstark and my friend Kyle Bryant. We are the Two Disabled Dudes, and we are honored and excited to be a part of this weekend of resilience, and really grateful for Pathway to Possible for inviting us and allowing us to share a little bit of our story and our outlook on life. Thank you for having us today.
Like John said, we're the Two Disabled Dudes. We have a weekly podcast where we talk about living life beyond circumstances. I'm Kyle Bryant, and I was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia when I was 17 years old. My family and I were so scared because we never heard of Friedreich's ataxia before. And when we looked it up online, we read things like you're going to be in a wheelchair soon, and you're going to be plagued by heart disease later in life. And we heard all these terrible, terrible things. We felt so incredibly alone, and we had no idea what to do. It took almost 10 years, but I decided that I wanted to go for a bike ride. And we started in San Diego, California, and we rode our bikes. I rode a trike with three wheels. We rode to Memphis, Tennessee. It was 2,500 miles and 59 days it took us. And it was me and my dad on our bikes, and my mom was driving the support vehicle. And we really proved to ourselves in that trip what we could do, and it really opened our eyes to possibilities in our lives. So in 2009, I came on staff at the Friedrichs Ataxia Research Alliance, and we started building a series of bike rides that raise money and awareness for Friedrichs Ataxia research. And I'm really excited to be doing that all the time now. At the same time, I always need something for myself to keep myself motivated. So in 2010, Sean and I put together a team for the world's toughest bike race across America. It goes from San Diego, California, all the way to Annapolis, Maryland, literally ocean to ocean. And to be considered an official finisher, a team has to finish in less than 9 days. That's 216 hours. Well, we had a documentary crew with us the whole time, and they produced a documentary called The Ataxian. And you know what? I'm going to leave you with a little cliffhanger. You're going to have to watch the movie to figure out if we actually made it or not. But that is really one of the strongest connections, really where Sean and I became really connected, and I will pass it over to him to tell his story.
Man, I was starting to think, like, can I talk? Like, do I get a part in this little video, Kyle? Thank you, Kyle. Like he said, there's been so much taking place over the last several years in our lives, but it wasn't always that easy. When I was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia, I was 25, so it was a little later onset than Kyle. It was the same year that he and his dad and mom had done that bike ride from San Diego to Memphis. Shortly after my diagnosis, in fact, like that night, I went home and got online and started to do some research myself. And beyond finding all those grim outlooks and prognoses that Kyle mentions, I found a bunch of headlines that mentioned Kyle and this bike ride. And I then discovered in that moment that there was a guy my age living with the same disease in my city. So I sought out to make Kyle my new best friend because I knew that even though the heart failure and the wheelchair and all these other hardships were going to be difficult someday, I knew that in that moment I had a lot of life left to live, and I wanted to do everything I could despite that prognosis. And it dawned on me that if this guy's willing to ride across country, he's probably got the same or similar mentality. So Kyle and I met for lunch and we became friends ever since. And really, it's been the bike that's kept us bonded, but also our shared mission to live beyond our circumstances. And that's really what Kyle and I talk about every week on our podcast. We believe that there is so much more to life than our disease or our disability or our challenges. And we believe it's our responsibility, and we take it on as a personal mission to help encourage people in all walks of life to do just that, live beyond their challenges.
Sean, I love that because it really relates to this conversation about resilience, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what this weekend is all about. And so we want to share a couple of stories of resilience that played out in our lives. And for me, I immediately think of my very first century ride, 100 miles in a day. It was 4 months after I first started riding my trike, and I decided that I wanted to give this a try. Well, I was the last one on the road that day. I toiled all day for 10 hours to reach that finish line. I was the very last person. The organizers were taking down the welcome back signs, and one person was slow clapping me across the finish line. But I'd done it 100 miles in a day. Are you kidding me? I can't even walk down the street, and I just rode 100 miles in a day. And that was when I really realized that if I'm willing to put in the work, if I'm willing to be resilient enough to take on these huge challenges, it is really going to pay off in the end. And that's my one of my biggest stories of resilience. How about you?
I think I love that you put it that way, that it takes some resilience on your part. If we don't persevere through the hardships and the challenges, then it's unlikely that we're going to achieve and accomplish the objectives that are important to us. Similarly, a bike story. When I committed to ride from Sacramento to Las Vegas with Kyle on his second big ride and my first big one, I didn't even own a bike. I committed and then had to go buy a bike. So I bought a bike and I actually crashed my bike and broke my collarbone. So my second ride out, about a year away from the big Vegas 650-mile ride, and I broke my collarbone, putting me out of the mix for 2 or 3 weeks. My arm was in a sling. I couldn't write, couldn't type, couldn't answer the phone, had to take a break from all that. And I realized in that moment that this was probably the prognosis that I'm up against. I'm going to lose my balance a lot. I'm going to fall a lot. I'm going to crash a lot. And there were a lot of things that I had to work through because that was very discouraging. But I felt like in that moment, if I was ever going to make it to Las Vegas or ever make it in anything in life, I knew that I would need to pick up my broken body and keep going. Because really, Kyle, life is hard for all of us, right? We all face setbacks or challenges or broken bones or things that are hard. And if we don't persevere through those hard things, then I think it makes it impossible to enjoy the finish line, whatever that may be for you.
Yeah, Sean, you say we all face challenges. And one of those challenges that we're all facing all at the same time is the pandemic, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
it's been challenging in many ways for so many different people. And for me, it's been isolation has been the biggest challenge. And I went for specifically in the very beginning, I went for a good 2 months without hardly seeing another person. I didn't even go to the grocery store. I'm sure there are lots of people that have a very similar situation. And, you know, I got to the point where I was in my head so much, obviously, and not getting feedback from other people that all the little problems throughout my day were expanding to huge things in my head, right? And so, what it took was for me to reach out through Zoom like this,
Mm.
through FaceTime, through phone calls, through all these different ways, emails, whatever it is, and really make connections with other people. Because, no matter how we make those connections, it's just important that we do for our own, in my case, mental stability. So how has the pandemic been playing out in your life?
I think I'll stay on the theme of broken bones. About a year ago, I fell and broke my femur. I fell because probably FA and broke my femur up near my hip joint. So a pretty gnarly fall. Took a lot of effort, surgery, rehab, a lot of time for it to heal and recover. In fact, it's probably still healing and strengthening. Well, because of that broken femur, I was actually stuck at home for 4 months. I could not walk, I couldn't drive, I couldn't get myself in and out of the car or my place. And beyond that, my birthday was celebrated in the middle of COVID, the summer activities to make COVID worse on the West Coast. We have fires throughout California and Oregon. So even going out for a hike has been difficult this summer, or unsafe, I should say. So I think I shared the sentiment with you that this isolation really has been the hardest part of COVID. And I'm grateful for FaceTime and Zoom and Google Meetups and all these different things. And it caused me to realize how important and powerful organizations like Pathway to Possible are in what they offer. I watching videos and exploring the website, and I know that Pathway to Possible has all kinds of really exciting programs and assistances and different things for people to do to connect with others. And I only imagine that with this pandemic that's been dampered or completely put on hold. And I'm hopeful that things pass soon and Pathway to Possible can help you and others continue to connect with other people.
So, Sean, we want to send everyone out with a little piece of advice. One last
Okay.
thought before we go. And so I'm going to continue this theme because my one piece of advice to everyone, no matter who they are, is to connect with other people. Find a community and become part of it, and support that community with your own personality and talents. And I think you'll find a lot of support and a lot of empowerment when you start putting yourself into that community.
Yeah, I think I would share my piece of advice for the team or for the viewers today. We all are going to face hardships. I don't think my broken femur is the last broken bone that I will experience. And in fact, I think that I'll even get more diagnoses over my years of challenging conditions. I'm committed to continuing to move forward. I believe if I'm breathing, if I woke up, there's no such thing as the wrong side of the bed. If I woke up, life is good. And I have work to do. So I would encourage you to keep going, keep moving forward. Consistency and discipline are important and imperative in reaching the objectives that are important to you. I'm not a big sports fan, but when I think about championships or Olympics or whatever it may be, I know and I realize that champions are not created overnight, that it takes a lot of effort to get to that podium.
All right, Sean, thanks so much for that piece of advice and sending us out on such a good note. You know what? I love these conversations, and everyone can have access to these conversations through our weekly podcast, right? But ultimately, we are just so grateful to be a part of this weekend of resilience through Pathway to Possible. And we hope everybody can tune into the podcast. Until then, keep living with urgency.